built the company, scaled it, went to 37 countries, exited in 2017, 18. When I was done exiting that and built a couple other companies on the way, I stepped back and I started to think, okay, what is behind all of this? And that's when the growth sciences really started to come to me, because I started asking just really two simple questions: is that why certain companies grow and why certain companies don't grow, and what is it behind them that set that kind of result.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelak. Thank you for listening to the show. I would love if you could give us your opinion on how you felt about the show, your experience that you have in regards to what we've been talking about. I am having an absolute blast, but your input is like dynamite on that explosion. So give us your input. We'd love to hear from you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Give us everything you got. We love it. Thanks. I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome to 7 to 8, our special series on 7 to 8 figure entrepreneurs. In this special series, I interview $1 million, some $10 million, and even some $1 million business owners who uncovered their twists and turns in their entrepreneurial adventure in order to help you to avoid the potholes and stick to the fast track. Welcome now to center stage, our next special guest. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelak, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Nader. Nader, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome. So give us a highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Sure. So I'm a strategist, innovator, and entrepreneur. And for the last, I've lost count of it, but it's about 26 years or so. I've been helping building my own organizations. So I've been very lucky. I've worked across not just building my own organizations, but working for some of the most amazing companies on the planet, helping them solve the one key essential problem that I focus on, what I write books about, which is exponential growth. And that's what I've been doing for the last 25, 26 years. Yeah.
Nice. So how did you get into that as your choice of occupations?
Well, it was 100% by accident. It wasn't really, I didn't just get guidance from a career counselor. It's like, you'd be really good at growth. Yeah, it's probably the path you should probably take. No, completely. I mean, I would say no matter what I plan, most things happen by accident. And, I learned very early on that, you set a goal and then along your way, keep very alert, because sometimes you end up stumbling across things that are actually a lot better than you were actually expecting. But if your blinders are on, you walk right past them. So you need to be super, super alert, because there's some pretty amazing things that can happen along the path. And that's kind of summing up the story of my life. I keep open to the different paths that are on the way as I'm on my way to where I want to go. And I end up discovering some of the most incredible things as I do that.
Nice. So take me back 26 years ago, you decided, hey, I'm going to go into business growth strategies, or
it didn't quite start like I actually started as an entrepreneur in the mid 90s and in the same hometown that you're from as well. So there's a company that I started called Calgary Online, and it became Canada Online later on because we own the col.ca, which we obviously can convert to Canada Online. And so we started off at what was called a basement internet service provider. So in 1994, 95, if you can imagine what that looked like, people were like, what's internet? I can't believe it. What is this thing? I stick my phone line into the wall, I hear this funny noise, and I get all this information. And it was pretty unbelievable at that time. But we knew that this was going to be the next big thing. It was going to disrupt everybody's lives. It was going to reach everybody from, every corner of the world, but it just wasn't known at that time. And I remember distinctively, there was a magazine article, I think it was about 1995, and they said, well, by year 2000, there'll be more people using the internet than the most populated country in the world. Of course, today, that seems like nothing. But at that time, where you were just dialing up, 2400 baud, and people, you'd be like, wow, that's really going to be that disruptive, that big. And that was one of the things that really inspired me to understand technology innovation, which I would say is at almost the core of almost everything I ever did from that point moving forward. So I started, building, one of the world's first internet service providers. We were competing with America Online at one point. We went national across Canada, and then we decided to go public. At that time, there was the Alberta Stock Exchange before it merged with Vancouver and became, nationwide. So before going public, we got bought out, which was awesome. It was fantastic for us. We exited right before, and obviously this was just by chance, not planned, but we exited actually 2 months before the dot bomb had taken place. And at that point in time, being a young entrepreneur, just like having this crazy wild idea, seeing the future and having a massive success like that, you're ready to go to the next thing. And so what happened after that is I just had like a whole series of failures because I believed in innovation technology, but the people funding it did not. Not at that time anyways. It seemed to be very toxic. But I pursued it anyway. So I built things like Launch Pilot, which was, first generation AI company for the financial service industry, and so forth. So I built like all these tech firms, and being based in Calgary, that Calgary, and especially Canada, is like the back end to Silicon Valley. A lot of the biggest tech firms on the planet are Canadian founded, or Canadian run by Canadians, or founded from Canada, which surprises a lot of people. So unless you're from Canada or in Silicon Valley, you wouldn't actually, have much background to that. But that was one of the kind of secret weapons of Silicon Valley, still is actually till today. But yeah.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Out us. Make everybody know. Was
the
our best kept secret. Now it's not.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting at that time, the Canadian government was so probably at one of its most dynamic stages, by the way, at that time. And one of the smartest things that they did is that we don't know how to do what needs to be done, but let's get the guys together who can, and let's open the way for them to do it. And that at that stage, it was some of the most dynamic policies were established. Even the ease of regulations, especially in telecommunications, were probably at its best state at that time. When the government said, like, listen, let's let these innovators do what they need to do, because they're competing against U.S. firms, across the border, who can enter our market, we can enter their market openly, and we need to get these Canadian companies doing very well. And at that time, it was amazing. I don't think it's quite the same.
It's today, definitely not the same right now.
Yeah,
they are paying companies right now to adopt technology, let alone innovate it. So, yeah, it is done a complete 180. Fell on its butt when they pulled the chair out from under it. So, through your growth of businesses, at what point did you decide, hey, people clearly need to have a little bit more of an understanding of business acumen in general, I find, and that understanding of the growth process. So when did you transition into kind of that world of helping others?
Well, it took me a long time, because it took a lot of failures, but not just that. I had to take on so many different roles as a decision maker. So being an entrepreneur, being a policymaker, being in corporate, and being a consultant. And so when I got that kind of 360 view on organizations, and then I stepped back and exited several companies and worked with even governments on how to innovate and grow. At that point in time, I had realized that there's a science behind this thing. And at that point, it was just called growth hacking. It was just like a generic term that was being used, and it was being defined as an emerging industry. So just going kind of back how that came about, once I kind of exited that company, built all these tech firms, I was actually headhunted by a lobbying firm out of Silicon Valley that represented the tech industry. And so that was kind of my first exposure to government and policymaking. It wasn't something that I had, like I said, it wasn't something that I would wake up and presume like, yeah, I'm really excited about, doing something like that. What I knew it was kind of the next thing that needed to be done. And by doing that, I learned quite a bit, and then shifted all the way halfway across the world to work with one of the most innovative governments on the planet, literally shaping innovation in ways that, organize, like, companies want to learn from, how a government did it, which is a very unique scenario.
Right.
So that's how I ended up like at half across the world in Dubai, and as the chief strategist for the Emirate, shaping, the future. And at that time, there's literally nothing here. We had this amazing canvas. I love starting from scratch. It's one of the beautiful things about closing a chapter is starting a whole new one, and being able to shape your future by creating it yourself, and being part of that process, and that being your product is quite amazing. So I did that for like a number of years. I probably really cut my teeth understanding why decisions were made the way they were, both at a macroeconomic level, a political level, government level, corporate level, entrepreneurial level. And I started to understand how, not just how these systems works, but the influence behind how certain decisions were being made. And then as I did that, I moved on to A.T. Kearney, one of the top strategy firms. And so I was brought into as head of innovation and thought leadership to work with the Fortune 1000 companies to answer really difficult questions like, what does the future look like? And what should we do about it? Simple question, but very difficult to answer. And so, did that. And then I started, I couldn't work for corporates and government anymore. I'd done that for some time. I had to go back to my entrepreneurial roots, started a NASA space certified company, being the 43rd person and company being certified in the NASA space technology program. built the company, scaled it, went to 37 countries, exited in 2017, 18. When I was done exiting that and built a couple other companies on the way, I stepped back and I started to think, okay, what is behind all of this? And that's when the growth sciences really started to come to me, because I started asking just really two simple questions: is that why certain companies grow and why certain companies don't grow, and what is it behind them that set that kind of result. And so my questioning became a little bit more sophisticated. Why would some companies start not growing and then eventually grow? Why would some start growing but not growing? Why would some grow and stay consistently growing? Why would some just not grow at all? And I started exploring it in a very structured and scientific manner. And by doing that, I wrote my first book, which is Ready, Set, Growth Hack. And essentially, it's a framework that teaches people exponential growth. And probably the most surprising thing people learn when they first meet me is that growth is a science. And the thing that kind of surprised me is I was, figuring this out and building it when I started looking at management methodology. So if you go to Harvard or Stanford or any of the, the big firms, get your MBA, not firms, sorry, universities, they're really good at teaching you the basic building blocks. Even if you went to an accelerator or incubator, it's exactly the same thing. They'll be able to help you build your business model, how to hire people, get your finances in order, build your product, and then you graduate or you get out of your accelerator or you graduate from your MBA school. And then you're tasked with the idea of how to grow that company, right? And that's where the big question mark is. Well, I didn't learn that. How do I exactly do that? And so that's where the mystery comes in. So how do I grow? And that's where I jump in. That's where I come in. And that's where I start helping people and organizations answer those type of questions. So in the first book, which is this one here, so Ready, Set, Growth Hack, that's exactly what I did. Is we started looking at the framework behind how does exponential growth work. So we look at things like, warfare mechanics, asymmetrical warfare, underdog tactics. Why does like a company that is bound to fail all of a sudden grow at ways that no other organization can do? What have they done differently? And there's a framework to it, which is what I teach in there. And by doing that, I got many invitations as a keynote speaker to some of the biggest organizations in the world who all have growth problems. So the cool thing about being in my business is everyone has a growth problem.
Right.
So it's a privilege in that side, but it has its challenges that come with it. And
I was going to say, and so the good news is for everybody listening to this is that if it took you 20 years to figure it out and go, oh, okay, this is how businesses have to grow somehow, and it wasn't through Harvard that I learned that, then the rest of us have hope.
Yeah, it takes time. No, it really takes time of like failure, reflection. And one of the most interesting things, actually going back when I wrote my first book, was that I failed for the same reasons most people did. And so what was it? Is I start reading a whole bunch of books. I start listening to a whole bunch of podcasts, hiring consultants, going to seminars. And the one thing I noticed about all of this, which is what set many people to failure, not intentionally, was that somebody will paint their formula to you and say, this is the way it's done. And then you will follow that formula because if it worked for, XYZ person who's been successful at it, it must work for me, right? But that doesn't work, actually. And that's why I failed for a very long time. I kept taking someone else's formula, and they never told me that. In fact, nobody tells you that, because it'd be very difficult to sell a book or a seminar. And I think, no, this is just one of the ways of doing it.
And it's not going to work for any of you.
Exactly. So what happened was that I started writing and speaking from the perspective where I'm going to help you find your growth formula. There's no such thing as me telling you how to do it, because I don't have the answer to your formula. I have the answer to how to help you find your formula. And that is essentially what I started focusing on, and that started creating significant results for me and my clients and the companies that I would build. Because I'll give you just a classic example. The first time I meet a client, like, hey, we're benchmarking against XYZ company, and my competitor is doing this and that. And I'm like, cool, throw all that out of the window, start from zero. What would it look like? And they can't. They're just like, no, we need to bench our competitors doing this and that. I'm like, excellent, just throw it out the window. Tell me from zero how you do this in an ideal world. Let's just have that conversation. And that conversation is a very difficult conversation to have, because we are so conditioned by the time we get to that point that there's a conversation like that, we're unable to really look outside the box. And what's fundamental behind this is exponential growth comes from the unknown. Okay, so it comes from an area which is unknown. Why? If I was benchmarking against my competitor and I was just going to do it better, faster, or cheaper, I wouldn't be really growing exponentially. I'd only be growing incrementally, and that's why people only grow incrementally, because that's kind of how they've gone about it or have been educated to do it, or that's how they've just been doing it for so long. And in order to hit exponential growth, you need to be looking and understanding how to tap into the unknown areas. And that's not easy to do. There's obviously, I teach how to do that, and then you figure out your formula how to do that. And that's how I got into my second book, which is growth thinking. I just found that, show that here. So what happened was that this is kind of like the design thinking for the growth world. So it was, how do we take and implement this, take it to the next level, and then they can just go ahead and action it to make it as actionable as possible. And what's interesting about growth thinking is I had a lot of students from Harvard and Stanford and some of the big schools start using my tool. And it's not used part of their curriculum. It's actually just was used as a tool, because they would be looking for growth methodologies and exponential growth, and they would just come across the framework and then how to action it, which is the growth thinking. And that eventually led to many things: writing articles for Harvard Business Review, being their growth expert, doing webinars with them, and it would explode, because it's the question on every CEO's mind. It's like, dude, how do I grow tomorrow morning? I've got a growth mode. What am I going to do tomorrow when I walk in? And handle this. So one of the most interesting challenges I had, and this is like more on the corporate level rather than startup companies and small organizations, is something I call the boardroom ego. And so when I would work with large organizations, everybody would seem to have the answer, and they would hire, someone like me to come help. And the weirdest thing was, if everybody had the answer, why would you hire me? Right? Why am I there? And so what happens, obviously, there is a problem, but everyone seems to have the answer, but nobody seems to be putting into action. And how I got past this was in a very interesting way, because as I mentioned, that exponential growth is in the unknown areas. And so I would, literally sit in a boardroom in front of everyone at the board, and I tell them, guys, listen, let's all agree to one statement to get out of this I'm the expert. Just get out of this ego. And it would be, let's all agree to a statement that I don't know. Okay. And if we all agree to a statement that I don't know, there's only one thing in front of us logically, which is, what do we need to experiment with to figure out what we need to do in order to solve the growth problem? And it sounds kind of comical sometimes in the beginning. Let's all agree to I don't know, right? And then, oh, okay, great. and then we shift the mind. It's a mindset shift. How do we start looking at things that you weren't looking at, or weren't looking at it in the right way? And how do we experiment so that we can find our way to finding exponential growth?
Love it. So do your formulas work best with kind of SaaS companies, the big pharmas, and like I know that for all businesses there's three fundamentals. You need to have marketing, you need to have sales, and you need to have fulfillment. And there's always going to be problems in one of those three areas, no matter how big your company is. And that's what you got to solve for. But when it comes to growth hacking and 10xing and all of the kind of books that I've read, things like that, a lot of them are like, yeah, that works great if you're a pharmaceutical company or a SaaS company, you've already got a couple of $100 million in the bank. This is fantastic. But what about the guy that's going, hey, I think I want to be a plumber, and I want to start a franchise and go worldwide because I have something that nobody else has. Really? Do you?
Yeah. So no. The thing is, the growth sciences and growth hacking is applicable to every type of organization at every level. Now, nice. I'm glad you brought that up, because the myth is that it's great for startups and great for tech companies, but okay, they're good at it actually, and they have some advantages that will help them, but it works for all organizations. And your question was the challenge I challenged myself with when I wrote the book, Growth Thinking. So what I did is I started a challenge, which anyone can watch. It's on YouTube. It's $1 million challenge, broken down into $10,000 challenges, and it's called the 10-Day Growth Hacking Challenge. And I work with the Founders Institute and Startup Grind, two of the largest accelerators on the planet. So they'd bring me the creme of the creme, companies they've got interest in, they have super growth potential, they've helped them build all their basic building blocks, and they get to spend 10 days with me. And then those 10 days, what we do is we find exponential growth. And we do it openly. So we run the methodology, and when we do that, we intentionally work with all kinds of companies, anything from two ladies who had a bikini company, all the way to a podcast, a media business, all the way to energy healing, beauty business. We go into financial services. So we intentionally go through a wide variety of different levels to show how this would work so that anybody watching this can understand that they can do it themselves. You can learn it. You can see how others are doing it. The most important thing, though, about the question you asked me is that there is no one way to do it. So let's say you're talking about a SaaS company, and there just happen to be ways that SaaS companies grow. The minute that you see that's good knowledge to know. Yeah, you need to look at things differently. So the awesome thing about knowing how others do it, you've just learned what not to do and move on to the next thing and find what they haven't done, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? So when people come, again, it's the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we're in the pharmaceutical business. This is the benchmarks. Is like, okay, great, throw it out the window. Let's start from scratch. Here's how we're going to do it. So it's not easy to do as a mindset, because when people have been doing the same thing for so long, it's kind of like, no, I mean, there's a way to do it, and I tell them, there isn't. If there was a way for you to do it, you would have done it already. You wouldn't need me. You wouldn't need to read the books. You wouldn't need to listen to the podcast. You would have already figured it out. And the reason you haven't figured it out is you haven't got past the hurdle of figuring out your own growth formula. And that's really the hurdle to start with before you can get into exponential growth.
Nice. So it'd probably be easier for the plumber that wants to go international to figure that out than it is for the SaaS company to do it. That's funny. That's awesome. So let's back up the bus a little bit. When you were working with these people and they're looking at that growth hack, is there a point in their business that this makes more sense? Is it before they started up? Is it once they've been in business for 5-10 years? If they've been in business for 20 years, is it too late?
Yeah. So one of the most common mistakes is people come to me and say, hey, I want to build my product first, and I want to get it right, then I want to grow. And I tell them, well, chaos is exactly when you need to grow, right? It's at that beginning part where everything is a puzzle, because if you've got all that figured out, you're already stuck, right? And you need to engineer and build growth into your product, right? So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you're building this product, but you haven't built in referrals. And I'm just talking about something super simple at this stage, right? It gets way more complicated than that. And you figure that kind of out later. So you go back and you build your next version and your next version. And naturally, you'll be building the next version, but you need to think about growth from day one. And the reason that I always tell people the most optimal time is in chaos is because that's when you're the most open to change. Once you've cemented certain things and you've locked them in, you're less likely to be as open to trying out different things and experimentations than you would when you're in a situation of change and chaos.
I love it. So when somebody's going through kind of this growth phase, are they thinking, I want to be huge, I want to take on the world? Is that more of a, hey, we have this solution that could save the world? What kind of outlook is most helpful for you, or when you're looking at a growth hacking strategy? What kind of mindset does an entrepreneur have?
Well, okay, so something that I had learned working with many companies, there are kind of two types of companies when you look at them from growth. There's scalable and sizable, okay? And everything that you read talks about scale, right? So let's make it scalable. Nothing wrong with that. Every business has to have scale. But there's some businesses by their nature is that they're sizable. Okay, what does that mean? Sizable means you still can be $1 billion company, right? You still be like a one-man show and become $1 billion company. But the essence of how you grow is a little bit different, being sizable versus being scalable. So a good example for sizable are things like professional services businesses. So if accountancies, wherever there's a professional service required, law firms. So law firms are a perfect example of that. Consultants is another one. So they they want to build and automate everything, but the reality is the craftsmanship of the people behind it is why people buy into that business. So that's building a sizable business, not a scalable business. That doesn't mean that you can't be $1 billion company. You can, but you have to work and think a bit differently going down that route than just being like, oh, we're going to take this consulting business, turn it into a SaaS business. That's not going to work. It's the craftsmanship that people buy into, and craftsmanship is not going away. Even with artificial intelligence, craftsmanship is not going away. You're going to have to get even better at it.
I love it. And so when it comes to kind of the crystal ball and seeing into the future, did you hone that down to fine art science? Or how's your skill set in that area?
Well, I mean, I use the process which I use in Ready Set Growth Hack, right? Which we step back and we experiment and we take a look at, like, how do we look at this differently? And so to me, everything starts with mindset. And one thing I got to warn you about mindset is many people underestimate it. So they say, no, it's more important to have the hard skills than the ability to have the soft skills and the mindset. But the mindset is what guides the soft and hard skills. And if you overlook that, then all the hard work you'll do and the soft and hard skills that you're trying to put into place, it could go into great waste because you have to start from here first in your mind before you work with anything else, because that's your lens that guides you into doing everything that you do after that.
Love it. So in a minute, I'm gonna ask you for an example of your Cinderella story. But before we do that, we're gonna take a little break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
Excellent. So give us an example of a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Sure. So I have a base case that we use always in training, and one of my very early clients that's very, very interesting. So this client had invented something called an O3 machine. O3 machine is essentially purified oxygen. So he invented this little tiny machine. He was early in stages. He'd do hospitals and clinics and homes. And so he'd kind of show up, he'd put this tent over your home, get everything out, the 3 Ps, people, pets, and plants. Okay. And then he plugs in his machine and then he completely sanitizes your house. Right. And so, and yeah, and this is like in the early 2000s. So there was the SARS was still kicking in. So people became a lot more aware. And so I think he was doing this at like, a couple $100, come in, it would take about eight hours in the day. And he was doing roughly $25,000 a month, which was pretty good for him, for a guy who just invented this tool. He's running around in his truck doing it. And then he came and he's like, he wants to scale. And so we took about a year and a half and we 27x this company. So we got to roughly over $1 million a month. And we did that by it all starts with a color hack, and which is where the most so remember I was talking to you about finding the things that nobody would understand and see. And so if you see these tarps on these homes, they're actually manufactured in, I think, 3 colors. It's black, blue, and white, and most of the time it's usually blue or black that's used. And so you see these tarps are usually the same color. So he shows me the tarp and I said, okay, well, can we buy a different color? So he calls up suppliers and he says, it's not really. And then we find a supplier that says, well, we can find a way to change the color. What color do you want? And so I said, okay. So I told him, we want that really bright orange color that you see in construction, or, the really bright orange. So when the sun shines on it, it's an eyesore. And so they're like, okay, we can make it happen. So we get our first one. And he said, well, what the hell are we going to do with this thing? And I told him, well, what we're going to do is, the night before we do, a client, we're going to go 5 houses in front, 2 and 2 on each side. And we're going to have a card, which has the same color as the tarp on one side. Then on the front, a pre-apology saying, we'll be working on house XYZ in front of you, doing the following sanitization services. You find a bright canopy or light coming through. Forgive us for the disruption to your day. And it sounds like a really strange message, but they wake up in the morning, people having breakfast, and it's really bright, and there's this orange tarp, and they got this card. And so what happened is we'd have 3 of those. So we'd had total of 9 houses. So 3 would actually take reference from the neighbor and get instantly 3 clients on the spot. Okay, so we 3x, just buy 1 get 3, right? So or get 1 client and get the 3. And then we started working on like, okay, how do we alter the service technically so we can shorten the time, decrease the machine size? How do we increase, I'll give you some examples. So when this is plugged into the house, everything gets sanitized. But there was things where there were add-ons, like I'll give you an example. So let's say you wanted your fridge to be sanitized, right? So technically all we have to do is just open the fridge, actually. If we want to do your closet, all we have to do is just open your closet. We want to do your cutlery, all we have to do is just open the shelf, right? The drawer. And so 1, that wasn't being done, and 2, it wasn't being charged for, right? So if you wanted your fridge, that's an extra, $100, including us removing the food, and we would by surprise refill it with a basket that would automatically have the referral of the person who had given it to them. It's like a gift from them, but we've done it for them. And then we'd to open up the counters and all that would be another $50, and then for the closet another $50. And so these things would all add up. And the garages, I think we did for about $350, which and then all of a sudden it went from roughly, I think it was $300 charge all the way up to about almost $1,000. No
Nice.
problem. So
hockey bags, that's an extra 1,000 right there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So and then the next thing would be like consistency, because this thing, I mean, it can last easily, I mean, depending on usage, but it can be like 60 days all the way up to 6 months maximum, because people consume things in their homes.
Yep.
And so the trick was like, well, how do we get people on this, for a ongoing 1 year? And then we figured a way to do that. And so at every point we were finding exponential points that we would just be moving at exponential moves. And that's how we got from, $25,000 up to over $1 million a month. And collectively, even after the year and a half, he's about 48x'd.
Nice.
It's a very valuable company today.
All right. That sounds like total fun. I mean,
I
could talk about this stuff all day. This is my fun juice. This is what I love to do. Awesome. So when somebody's kind of running their business, what kind of struggles are they going through right now? You mentioned that they've hit a plateau. They're in chaos. They're not liking it. What other kind of struggles might they be going through? And they're thinking, oh my God, Nader, I need you so bad.
Well, I think the biggest thing right now that I experience, this is more with larger clients at the moment. And I think smaller clients are going to experience the same thing. There are all the changes happening in the world right now at a macroeconomic level. And the question is like, how do we respond? And what are some of the changes that are about to happen? And how do we prepare for it today? And so I'll go a few steps back. I'll go back to 2020 during the pandemic, the time none of us want to remember. So that time, right? That time. So it kicks in, and then like my phone goes off the hook when lockdowns happen and clients are like, well, what do we do? And I said, we do nothing. And they're like, what? That's like the last answer we'd least expect from me. And I said, you do nothing, because when things are in extreme intense motion, you need to stop and observe and understand what's really happening, right? So it's almost like, imagine you're in the car on a highway, and I point to something really far away. You can see it clearly because it's really big, it's far away. But if I start telling you, start looking at something real close, you can never see the detail because you're going too fast. It's just a blur. Your vision is just seeing a blur, and that's really the state that you're in. So you need to stop and take a look, or drive much slower, or wait to get to a time that you can actually see it clearly. It doesn't sound very logical at a time when you feel you need to take action, but sometimes the best action take is absolutely nothing, because you need to be able to observe what's about to happen. So there,
I have to stop you there, because I'm thinking, wow, can you imagine how boring movies would be if the person in the movie would actually do that? It's like, oh, and clearly we need to take this road. Okay, movie's over. That worked.
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like fun. A good friend of mine put it in a nice way. He said, he said, that calm is a skill. I was like, what? What do you mean? He's like, calmness is a skill. And from that day, I've actually been observing that and working with clients exactly on that. I'm like, sometimes we need to gain calm in order to see things, because it is its own skill. And this is where, like, have you ever met somebody where the whole world can be just collapsing in front of them, and they're just like sitting there like, no problem, like an icicle. It's just no problem. It's okay. Those are the best type of decision makers. Those are the best. I'm telling you, they're the best type of decision makers. It gives you an ability to see things for what they are. So some crazy things, are happening worldwide right now. New currencies are coming in. Now, I'm not talking cryptocurrency. I'm talking about new currency systems, new currency exchange systems. New economic systems are being looked at right now. Larger companies are changing their portfolios at the moment. Like, how are we going to be looking at different things when it comes to technology? IP regimes in certain countries are starting to reform with some of the changes that were happening, especially with the BRICS and BRICS Plus that's coming into play. So there's some really big picture things happening that you need to step back and understand, because it has a micro impact on a lot of different businesses, and that's a whole different story. And there's a lot to unpack.
That we can go into in very much depth later.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to unpack there, but that answers the question of what's on a lot of the CEOs' minds when I'm working with them right now, to understand what is the world going to look like in 12 months from now and 24 months from now, and what do we need to do today to understand what some of those growth opportunities would look like.
Absolutely. Well, and I can imagine what it's like in Dubai going, like you kind of have a fantastic vantage point of what's going on in the world there, because you still have the ability to be able to watch all angles of who's doing what, when, where. It's kind of like being in Switzerland in the Second World War, figuring out what's going on. So many conversations. And I know that our listeners are going to want more from you too. So how did they start that journey with you?
Sure. So you can go to my website itself, which is nadersabry.com, which is Nader Sabry, SABRY.com. And if you take my full name like that and put it into YouTube as well, so I always push people to my YouTube. There's a ton of free educational content that you can learn. Probably one of the first things people tell me, like, "Oh, dude, that's all for free." I'm like, "It is. It's on. You can get it all there." I really recommend that you watch the challenge, the 10-day growth hacking challenge. You can learn a ton of things, especially with the question you asked me earlier about, does this apply to my type of business? And when watching those, just if you find a similar one to your industry, awesome, watch it. But watch the guys that are not in your industry. You will learn a ton of stuff that you can take back and apply to you. And just be very open-minded about that. So you can get like a ton of content there. To learn about exponential growth, you can go to Amazon, just type in my name, and there's 3 books I've got, which is the Ready, Set, Growth Hack, which is the framework, Growth Thinking, which is the implementation of it, and then most recently, a book called Hire Me If You Can, and that talks about the talent shortage in the growth sciences space. There's about 1 million growth hackers will needed by 2030, and there's no more than about 18,000 of them globally right now. So there's a massive shortage in this industry. So we talk about what that is and what it looks like, and what's the demand for this industry going to look like, and how companies are going about paying up to 120% premium for expertise in the space. So, yeah.
All right, now we got you intrigued on a whole nother level all over again. I love it. We will, of course, have all of Nader's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, open up in a new browser, because, of course, we're not done yet. So I get to ask you, at what point in life did you know you were special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
Very early days, probably even as a very young kid, when I was just not accepting the status quo. I'm very anti-status quo, not for this purpose of being anti-status quo, but I knew that there was always a better way to do things than the way everybody's doing it. And at that point, I knew the only channel to do that would be entrepreneurship. And that was pretty early on that I had discovered that. The challenge was how to do it.
Right.
That's where all the learning came in. Yeah.
Nice. What was your first venture, if you don't mind me asking?
My first venture was I started selling candy at school, very simple stuff. I learned trade, and then surprisingly enough, prior to setting up my internet company, I started a 900 number business. I don't remember the 90s. That was a very big thing. So information lines, to some of the most obvious things you can think of, some very unobvious things that were being applied in those times. So, I started one of those, and then I had a web development business before my internet service provider, if you can imagine that, which was pretty crazy, because usually it's the other way around. So, yeah.
Nice. I love that. So you mentioned a ton of ways people need to think about building kind of their $1 million, $10 million, $100 million businesses. Is there anything you would recommend that people avoid like the plague? Mentally, physically, emotionally, otherwise?
I would avoid taking on other people's formulas. I would learn from everybody, but come up with your own formula. And don't be afraid how long it takes and how much pressure and how intense it might be, because it's not going to come to you immediately, because you need to kind of discover yourself, your market, what's unique to you. And then once you've got it, a light bulb goes off and everything in your world will change. But it takes a little bit of time for that. So once you've kind of figured that out, you just need to be comfortable in your own skin to pull that off. And that in itself, that process could be quite challenging. So I would say, to me, that's the normal thing. The second thing, though, that I would suggest, I know you only asked me for one, is the scalable and sizable thing. This changes the mindset of so many people. I'm sure there are people listening like, I think I'm a sizable business. What happens next? And growth hacking still applies to that, but you have to go about it a bit differently. Once you understand that you're a sizable versus a scalable business, and the reason you fall into those traps when you go to mentors or read books and everyone's just talking scale, and it's all kind of a similar format or similar ideas, you can fall into certain traps. So if you're a sizable business, just understand you're a sizable business. You still can become $1 billion company, but you do it differently. That's it.
I love it. So everybody running a sizable company right now is completely enthralled. Go check out the books, YouTube, because there's a ton of information there. And of course, connect with Nader, because that's going to be your ultimate source. I love it. You have been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
Good luck. Have fun growing. I have so much fun doing what I'm doing. Learning is a lot of fun, and experimentation is even more fun. Just have fun doing it, and good luck with it. And you'll find your way. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I know how valuable it is.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Peeps, thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow. Thank you for listening to 7 to 8. If you're interested in upping your speaking game, be sure to connect with our guests with the links in the show notes and connect with me to see how we can help you get your tech done for you and help your speaking dreams come true.